मंजिलें तो काफी तय करनी है जमीन पर, अब आसमां से कुछ बातें करते हैं। चलिए आसमां की ऊंचाइयों को छूते हैं। Hello everyone, I Janya Sharma welcome you all in today's session of webinar. Well, this time we have a slightly different topic for you all, which I personally believe everyone loves hearing about. That is all about aviation. Once, at least once in our childhood, we all wanted to become a pilot. Let it be a child of 21st century, late 70s, 80s, or 90s. Some became one, but many of us couldn't. Want to know the reason? Some family issues or some financial problems. Many of us look into the sky and think, wow, how lucky those pilots are. And some of us board or depart an aircraft and think, oh, I wish I could sit in that cockpit. People often wonder, how do pilots control the whole aircraft by just sitting in that small place called cockpit? Or how do they overcome those big, strong turbulence? How does ATC manages that strong, or you can say that full of aircraft, air traffic, or why do an aircraft go for a go around? What is the difference between Boeing and Airbus? Or why do some pilots prefer Boeing over Airbus or Airbus over Boeing? All these questions move around a person's head whenever they see a pilot or an aircraft. Tell me if I'm wrong. Well, I know I'm not. So today I feel my pleasure to introduce you all to the Boeing boy of India, Captain Tapesh Kumar. Though Captain Tapesh, also famous by the name Boeing Boy or his nickname Tapshi, doesn't require any introduction. But for those who don't know him, Captain Tapesh is a captain on Airbus A320 in AirAsia and a former captain on Boeing 737 with a well-renowned airlines Jet Airways. He also owns his own aviation academy and is a pilot and a YouTuber by profession. You can always find him on YouTube by the name Boeing Boy. We welcome you, sir. We also welcome Dr. Harish Mittal, Principal, BMIET, Dr. Abhinav Janeja, Associate Director, BMIET, Dr. Vishal Jain, Dean Academics, BMIET, and all our fellow professors and students. Now, welcome on board, audience. Kindly fasten your seatbelt as we all are going to take off in the world of aviation. Over to you, sir.
All right. Hello, everyone. My name is Tapesh Kumar, like Chania just introduced. I am currently a captain on the Airbus A320 with AirAsia. And so let me just introduce myself first a bit. So name Tapesh Kumar. I am from Delhi. I'm 27 years old, and I've been in aviation for the last about 10 years now. I started off my career back in 2011, and I did my initial training from Chimes Aviation, which is in Madhya Pradesh. And eventually, I did my advanced training or my type rating on the Boeing 737 from Berlin. Thereafter, I got a job with Jet Airways. I flew with Jet Airways as a first officer initially on the 737. Eventually, I moved on to the left-hand seat, or basically I became a captain on the 73. And Jet Airways, as we all know, it shut down in 2019, and thereafter I joined AirAsia. So I'm currently flying as a captain on the Airbus A320 for AirAsia. Like Johnny said, I have a YouTube channel. It's called Boeing Boy, wherein I put up aviation-related stuff. And otherwise, I also have an academy where I teach upcoming pilots. So those are the basics about me. As far as today's session goes, first of all, thank you everyone for having me here. It's a pleasure to speak to all of you. Today's session, I'll be discussing some very basics of how to become a pilot, because I believe the audience who's watching the live stream right now, you might be interested in coming into this side after you're done with your engineering. I understand all of you would be engineers or like currently doing your engineering. And so today I'm going to give you a bit of an insight on how you can proceed in your career after you're done with your engineering. And thereafter, I'll tell you a little bit about a pilot's life, how it goes about, how we live our usual daily lives. And thereafter, I think we'll take some questions from the live chat, or if any of the panelists, they want to ask anything. So what I'll do is I'll initially start off by sharing a presentation with all of you. This is a presentation for webinars, and it details, in case also Janya, in case you want to share this presentation with anyone, I will send it to you on WhatsApp. and you can forward it. So if anyone who's watching the live stream, if they want the presentation, they can always take it from me. Okay? Or they can take it from you actually. I'll send it to you. All right, so I'll just share my presentation first and we'll just quickly run through it. And after that, we'll continue with the session. So this is basically all about the basics of being a pilot. All right, so this, like I said, it'll tell you the basics of how you can be a pilot. For those of you who are not aware, right now we're only talking about the basics in the sense of becoming a commercial pilot. We're not talking about military pilots. They are totally different. That's a totally different ballgame. This is purely about commercial pilots. So we basically are civilians and we fly for either airlines or we fly private jets or we fly or helicopters or something like that. It's basically non-military. We fly either passengers or we fly cargo. That's our usual jobs. First of all, why should we choose flying as a career, or why should you be interested in flying as a career? Well, the first thing, these are more of my own personal thoughts. So the reasons why I chose to be a pilot are, first is a 9 to 5 job is something which is not what everyone wants in life. Some people just do not want that same traffic jam every day and the same 9 to 5 office cubicle every day. So when you enter aviation, when you become a pilot, your cockpit or your office is basically moving. It's traveling from A to B every day. So the views that you get to see, the people that you get to meet, it's different on a daily basis. The sunsets and the sunrises, they are very beautiful. The stars, you can see a million stars at night, and it's every day you're doing something different. Every takeoff, every landing, and every flight that you operate, it's different than the one that we've operated on the previous day. That is one way challenging, and also it is in a way different than what everyone will get. Not a lot of offices or not a lot of job profiles will give you the option of doing something different every day and getting to meet new people and getting to see some really amazing views on a daily basis. Secondly is the monetary part. Obviously, that's one of the very big reasons of why you become a pilot. The salaries are very handsome. Compared to other professions, the starting salaries, at least in aviation, they're extremely, extremely great. I'll give you the figures eventually in the presentation, but the salaries are pretty good. The other thing is, you get the chance to travel all around the world. Some pilots who are layovers will go from Delhi to Bombay, Bombay to Chennai, and they stay for 24 hours in the same city. So if I have a friend saying I want to explore the city, I have 24 hours to do that. Transportation is provided for by the airline. I'll also be getting a car to drive me to and from the airport, and everything is taken care of by the airline. So that ensures, or that gives you the opportunity that you can explore new cities pretty much on a daily basis. So in a month, you do about 5-6 layovers, and in those 5-6 layovers, you've basically traveled to 5 or 6 cities, or you've had a paid vacation to 5 or 6 places, which is pretty good. Also, one of the very big advantages, in case you guys want to, in your family, basically, your immediate family, they all get free airline tickets. And that's pretty good. You can travel, your vacations are amazing. I'll just give you a small example. I traveled from Bangalore to Berlin. So I did Bangalore, Delhi, Delhi, Brussels, Brussels, Berlin, and all the way back. And you won't believe how much this costed me. It was like 15,000 bucks. That's it. Basically, you're just paying the taxes. And I mean, that's pretty good. Like a ticket which would have costed you about 2 lakh rupees is just for like 15,000 rupees. And this is not just for you, it's also for your immediate family, your spouse or your parents as well. So that's another very, very big advantage. And lastly, it's the respect that you get from people. Now, the total number of pilots in India as of now who are like flying for an airline, it's just about close to 8,000 people. That's it. Out of 1.3 billion people, just being or belonging to a family of 8,000 pilots, it's pretty rare. So if you go and tell someone pilot, the other person develops automatically a respect for your profession and for you. And that happens because of the rarity of the profession. And those were like, these are my personal reasons, and I believe they apply to a lot of people. And that is the reason why I personally suggest, choosing aviation as a career. Then a lot of you would have doubts on how to go about it. So I'll just quickly scroll through that. So first of all, I'm sure all of you are already class 12th passed, right? You're all in your engineering college. And I believe all of you would have science. But engineering as a degree is not a requirement. Neither is a master's or anything. You just have to be class 12th passed. And in your class 12th, you need to have maths and physics, which I'm very sure all of you must have had. Uh, and that too just passing marks. You don't even require to be, you don't need to have like 90%. As long as you pass class 10, class 12th with maths and physics, you're absolutely fine. Uh, should you get a degree first? Well, all of you are getting a degree right now, so this doesn't really make a lot of sense. But a degree is not technically required. But however, if you do have a degree, there's absolutely nothing wrong with it. Having a degree provides you as a backup option. So as a pilot, being medically and physically fit is of prime importance. And to basically, as a backup, you still have your engineering degree, right? So once you're done with your engineering, tomorrow, unfortunately, if something happens to your aviation career, you can always fall back upon the first option that you took, which is your engineering, and still manage a job. So having a backup degree, it's absolutely nothing wrong with that. Okay. Then there are a few doubts that people usually have about if I wear spectacles or if my eyesight is weak, is that okay? Well, yes, in commercial aviation, at least in our side of things, it is absolutely fine if you wear spectacles or if you have a weak vision, as long as it is 6 by 6 after correction. So after your spectacles or even before your spectacles, if your eyesight is 6 by 6, which is like a perfect eyesight, then you're absolutely eligible to become a pilot. As far as maths and physics goes, believe me, what you guys study in engineering, it's a lot more difficult than like what we study as pilots, because ours is a more practical job. Our job is to fly an aircraft. We don't build airplanes. We don't maintain airplanes. So we don't go into the very deep technicalities. Like we're jack of all trades and master of none. So we know a little bit about everything, but not in detail. Unlike you guys, I'm sure in engineering, the depth of studies that you go into, it's a lot more. So in aviation, your engineering degree would actually be of some help, not a lot of help, but yes, some help. You would be mentally more mature, and you would have a better understanding of things. Uh, all right, let me just share it again. Yeah. So even if you were weak with maths and physics, it's absolutely not an issue. Everything that we study in aviation is all very basic. We will never be studying anything which requires whatever you've studied in engineering or your class 10th or your class 12th. It's all like 10th and below. So the maximum level that we go to in terms of technical knowledge, it's maximum. Like the maximum that you go to is like, what is the value of tan theta? That's it. That's like the upper limit of things. उससे ज़्यादा maths, उससे ज़्यादा physics बिल्कुल नहीं चाहिए होती. Chemistry, bio, all of this anyway is not required. So it's pretty simple, to be honest. If you compare it to your engineering exams, यहाँ पे if you study like you guys do in your engineering, like पूरी रात बैठ के पढ़ते हो exam से पहले and then you pass the next day. Here, if you do that, you'll probably top the next day. So if you study the whole night, it's that easy. English fluency, yes, it is required. Don't mind my photos, okay? I've put up a lot of my photos in this presentation. But yes, English fluency is required. So English is the common language for aviation. So whichever country you go to, any country, be it China, Russia, any non-English speaking country as well, you will always be talking in English to everyone, to the air traffic control, to the engineers. So yes, a certain level of fluency is required. If you're not very fluent, believe me, it's not a problem. I personally was never very fluent with English, but as you practice, as you do it every day, you just get very good with it. And okay, so do you need to have six-pack abs, or do you need to be extremely physically fit? Do you need to run like sub 11 second times for 100 meters? No, absolutely not. Aviation requires you to be medically fit. You have to be perfectly fine. You should have all your limbs. Your both hands should be working. Your both legs should be working. And what is tested in our medicals is just very basic stuff. For example, you should not have any underlying problems, such as, let's say, a fatty liver or kidney stones or something like that. So these things are tested. It's not a very extreme physical test like probably NDA or the military side of things. They test you a lot more physically. Here it's absolutely fine. Even if you're slightly overweight or if you're slightly underweight, that's also not an issue. So like I said, the requirements to be a pilot, you need to be medically fit. You need to have maths and physics in class 12th, and you need to have lots of money. That's the most basic thing. That's the most common reason why a lot of people do not opt for aviation as a career. And the reason is it requires a lot of money. That's the biggest deterrent, to be honest. The amount of money that you require, I'll go into a bit more detail. I'll go into the numbers later on. But you require somewhere close to about 60 to 65 lakh rupees by the time you like actually get into an aircraft cockpit and you start flying an aircraft. So which is actually a very huge amount for a lot of people. I'll tell you the exact figures a little later on in the session. Is it tough? I've already told you it's pretty easy. It's all very logical. It's all very practical. We absolutely do not go into details, and it's all just very basic studies, at least the theoretical part of things. How much money do you need? Okay, so here are the numbers for you. How much money will you need to be a pilot? Well, as of this year, as of currently 2020, to get your initial license, to get your initial CPL license, which allows you to fly airplanes commercially for commercial purposes, it's anywhere between 25 to 35 lakh rupees. And after that, you eventually join an airline. So what happens is, in our initial training, we start off by studying about small airplanes, like a 4-seater, 6-seater aircraft. That initial training, you have to clear a few exams, basically 5 exams, and you have to fly for 200 hours on a real small aircraft, which you do at a flying club. All of that is somewhere close to about 25 to 35 lakhs. And eventually, but as airline pilots, we fly bigger airplanes, right? For example, I fly the Airbus A320, that can seat 180 people. So to train on those bigger airplanes, you then have to do your airline training. And that airline training is, again, you have to pay for it. There was a time back in the day, somewhere in 2000s, where the airlines used to sponsor it. But as of now, because it's all just a money-making business, airlines are no longer sponsoring it. So you've got to do it yourself. That is another about 20 to 50 lakhs. And that depends on which airline you end up joining. So on the whole, overall, as an average amount, you'd end up spending somewhere close to about 60 to 65 lakh rupees. Also, just a little bit about CPL, the license that you get. So just like we have a driving license, which allows us to drive a car, right? Similarly, you have a commercial pilot license. It's not a degree as such. You will not be considered a graduate. You will not be considered as anything else. It's just a technical course that you're doing, which allows you to fly airplanes. So it's nothing more than a license. With that license, you can join an airline, you can fly, but technically it's not a graduation degree. All right. Moving on further. So like I said, you get a CPL license. Youngest possible age to get a CPL license is 18, which is the age I got it at. However, you guys would be done with your engineering, right? So after your engineering, you'd be what, 22, 23 at the max. And that's also not a problem. Getting your license by that age is absolutely not an issue. Airlines hire people all the way till about 35 years of age. And 35 is a big age. It's absolutely fine if you come in after engineering. A lot of students come in after their graduation, even their post-graduation degrees. Just to give you a practical example, I have a student at my academy, and he's done his MBBS, he's done his MD as well. And he actually worked as a doctor for like a couple of years. And he's 28 right now, 28 or 29. And he's starting off his training right now. So in case you guys, if any of you are wondering if is it too late now that I've done my engineering degree or I've gotten into it, it's absolutely not. It's absolutely fine. Like almost about 30-40% people actually come into this field after they've done their graduation. Okay, moving back, the exact specific requirements are these. You have to clear some exams which are conducted by DGCA. DGCA is Director General of Civil Aviation. So these guys, they're the ones who are managing aviation in India. And they conduct exams every 3 months. You have to clear those exams and you have to clear your RTR exam. Then you go and fly an aircraft for 200 hours. That's a real airplane that you fly. You have to be class 1 medically fit. So your medical fitness is actually tested by the Air Force. Your initial medicals are done by Indian Air Force. Their medical fitness, the certificate that you get is called a class 1 medical fitness. So that's a requirement, and you gotta be 18 plus, like I said. You can do your flying either from India or from abroad. Abroad in the sense you can either go to US or you can go to Canada, New Zealand. There's a lot of options. Either of them is fine. You can either choose to fly from India or you can proceed abroad. It's pretty much the same. The training is the same. You're still flying the same small airplanes. There are a few differences and technicalities, which is basically you have to clear less number of exams when you fly from abroad versus when you to fly from India. It's totally choice if you want to fly abroad or if you want to fly in India. So like I said, after you get a CPL license, you have to learn how to fly the big airplanes. So for example, the photo that you see on the right hand side, that's the airplane which I fly. That's an Airbus A320. To learn how to fly these airplanes, you have to undergo something known as a type rating. Now, a type rating is not done on a real airplane because actually flying these big airplanes only for training purposes is very costly. The operating cost for an Airbus A320 per hour for an airline is somewhere close to about 1.5 to 2 lakh rupees per hour. So it just doesn't make any sense to fly a real aircraft for training. So we fly something known as simulators. Simulator is basically it's a 6-axis device. So it moves in 6 axes, and it's basically a hydraulic device in which you sit inside. Inside is exactly like a cockpit, and from the outside it's like a shell. And when you sit inside, the thing will move up and down, and you feel as if you're sitting in an actual real aircraft. And that's where we train. That training is known as your type rating. Type ratings can be done for multiple airplanes depending on which airplane you intend to fly or which airplane the airline that you've joined has. So like I joined Jet Airways. Jet Airways had Boeing 737, so I did my type rating on the 737, and now I'm rated on the Airbus A320. Uh, your type rating will cost you somewhere between 10 to 15 lakh rupees if you do it on your own. So there are two ways of going about it. You can either get your CPL license, do your type rating on your own, and then wait for airline vacancies to come out and then apply. Or you can get your CPL license, wait for airline vacancies, apply, get selected with an airline, and then do your type rating. Either ways, it's absolutely fine. It's again the student's choice how you want to go about it. If you have excess money left after your CPL license, you can always do your type rating on your own. I did it on my own back in the days when I was on the 737. So, uh, like I said, type rating has to be done. How much is the type rating going to cost you? It's 10 to 15 lakhs if you sponsor yourself. If you join an airline and then do it, the airline will ask you for money. And that is very variable. It depends from airline to airline. By the way, that aircraft on the right, that's the Airbus A320 from outside. That's the one that I'm flying right now. As far as the scope for job goes, see, right now, as we all know, Corona is there. And currently, I think only the people who are making masks or who are making alcohol, they're the only ones making profits. Rest, everyone's in losses. So is aviation. Aviation is amongst the worst hit sectors. Currently, the job opportunities are really bad. No airlines hiring, everyone's in losses. Very few airplanes are flying. For example, my airline, I fly for AirAsia. We have about 30 airplanes in our fleet. Out of those 30 airplanes, only 15 are flying right now. 15 are just sitting on the ground doing nothing. So airlines are not hiring. Every airline has excess pilots right now. So currently it's bad, but as and when the whole situation becomes normal, as and when the Corona thing ends, the industry will pick up. It'll pick up at a very fast pace because people need to travel. They have to travel. So once they regain the confidence of traveling again, obviously the passenger numbers will go up and the airlines will again obviously start expanding. That being said, India is amongst the biggest aviation markets in the world. Currently, we're at number 3 in terms of volume of number of people traveling. In the coming 10-15 years, we expect to be number 1 in the world. The maximum number of people would be traveling from India because we have a huge population. And as people are getting more money, as they're moving towards urban areas, there is a need to travel. If you wanna go to the US, you can't go by road, or you can't go to the US on a train. You have to take an aircraft. You don't have an option about it. So aviation in India will grow in the coming times. Things will get better. So if you start off with your training right now, or as most of you would start off your training if you decide to after your engineering, by the time you guys get your license, by the time you guys look for a job, things will be absolutely fine. It's absolutely not going to be an issue. Okay, continuing further, now there's something known as cadet programs. A cadet program is basically the airline will take care of everything. So there's two ways you can go about it. One is cadet, one is conventional. In the cadet program, you don't do anything at all. You just go to an airline after your engineering degree, tell them, I want to join your airline. They will enroll you into a cadet program after you clear the selection process. And then they will take care of everything. They'll send you to a flying school, they'll help you clear your exams. And at the end of everything, they will give you a job if you meet all the requirements. But the problem with this is it costs a lot. It's upward of 1 crore rupees. If you do it the conventional way, then the thing is you're managing everything on your own. You're choosing your own flying school, you're clearing your exams on your own. And at the end of it, you're waiting for vacancies to come, and then you're going to go and join an airline. So this is obviously it'll cost you less because you don't have a job guarantee. Just for that job guarantee, the airline's going to charge you quite a bit more. So in case you have excess money or in case you have black money, you can always go for a cadet program. It's a great option. Uh, all right. So yes, in like I said, in your cadet program, your jobs are assured as long as you meet all the requirements. So airlines have their own requirements when it comes to joining a cadet program. They have requirements on as you progress through your training. For example, you need to get a solo by these many hours. You need to finish your exams in these many months. As long as you meet all those requirements, you're absolutely fine. At the end of it, you will get a job. This is just like your engineering degree. So if you don't pass your exams on time, you're sent back to the previous year, right? Backlog types. Same thing happens with cadet programs as well. You got to meet the requirements. Okay, as far as the airline selection process goes, it's again very easy. As compared to your exams, it's super duper easy, not complicated at all. It's more of a psychometric thing wherein they analyze your psychometric abilities and they analyze if you can multitask, if you have a good enough memory. Because being an airline pilot, multitasking is one of our, it's one of our USPs. If you're good at multitasking, you will end up becoming a good pilot because you're doing like 20 things at one time. You're managing the aircraft flight path, you're manually flying the airplane, you're talking to the ATC, you're also keeping an eye on the other person, what he's doing, you're monitoring other airplanes around you. There's 20 things that you're doing and 20 things are running in your head at that moment. So multitasking is a very big thing that is tested in airline selection process. Plus there's usually a technical exam which will test your theoretical knowledge. And once you clear all of these and you have a personal interview, like pretty much all jobs have, where they ask you those standard HR questions and a few technical stuff. And after that, you end up getting a job with an airline. As far as our lives go as an airline pilot, we end up flying anywhere between 70 to 80 hours on an average in a month. So these 70 to 80 hours is basically from the moment we push back or from the moment we start our engines for a flight until the time we come back and we land the airplane. In a month, you're in the air for about 70 to 80 hours, basically. On an average, you work for 22 days. It can be 21, it can be 23, and the remaining days are off. So basically, you work for like 6 days and you get 1 or 2 days off. All our flying, it's governed by some very, very strict rules. These rules are enforced by the DGCA and it's called FTTL, Flight Duty Time Limitations. These limitations are very strict. There's no two ways about it. There's no loopholes in this. We are very strictly governed, and this governance, it defines how many hours you can fly in a day. So at the max, we can fly 11 and a half hours in a day. But then you need to be given certain offs. How much rest time you have between flights, that is also defined. And how many landings you can do in a day, that is also defined. So no airline can overwork you. No airline can really push you to your limits because it's all very fixed. It's all bounded by rules. So unlike a lot of corporate companies where people end up working like day and night, yahan pe you can't do that. Okay. As far as staying away from home goes, if you're a single and you're a bachelor, which I guess all of you are, life is pretty good. You get to travel a lot. You get to visit new places. However, if you're married, then yeah, your wife might be a bit angry because we do end up spending about 10 nights away from home in a month. Those 10 nights will be spent at a very nice hotel, which is paid for by the airline, and it's all very sorted. It's just that you have to stay away from home for about 10 nights a month, which honestly, personally, I think is not bad at all. Then comes the question of, can we join a different airline? In the sense, can we join like Emirates or Singapore or some of these, bigger airlines, the renowned ones? Yes, you can. Not immediately. You need to fly in India. You need to gain some experience. And once you've gained that experience, you can always move on to a different or a bigger airline. Or you can always move on to a bigger airplane as well. So, for example, the airplane that you see here in the background, this aircraft, that's a Boeing 737. That's the one I used to fly earlier. And I had the choice of moving on to a 777. Now, 777 is a much bigger airplane. It flies only international flights. I personally did not, because I like to fly the 737. Like, I love the aircraft, but you always have the option of moving on to bigger, better airplanes. So wide body, like I said, again, experience is the key. Also, if you get a CPA license, there are a few possibilities. Working for an airline is not the only option. There are other options available as well. You can be an instructor. You can teach upcoming pilots on how to fly airplanes. You can even join the Coast Guard. Now, Coast Guard is a government service, but they hire people from the open market, as in they take up CPL holders, they get preference. You can also join the Indian Air Force. Indian Air Force hires CPL holders for their transport airplanes. That is possible. You can join a charter company. Charter companies are basically, if you want to rent an aircraft, you can do that. The pilot would be the one. And the private jets, like you can join Reliance or Tata or some big group. These guys have their own personal jets and they require pilots. So flying for an airline is not your only option. You can also do any of these other things. Career progression is actually pretty good. So you start your career off as a first officer. Now, first officer is someone who wears like 2 or 3 stripes on their shoulder, usually 2 stripes on their shoulder. I'm sure you must have seen pilot uniforms. So if you see 2 stripes on the shoulder, that's a first officer. If you see 3 stripes, that's a senior first officer. So as you gain more experience, you become a senior first officer. Eventually, you become a captain. A captain wears 4 stripes, and that's my current designation. I'm a captain. The remaining 3, the LTC, the instructor, and the examiner, these 3 positions are for training. So till a captain, you're flying airplanes normally, it's like just a normal regular flight where you're taking passengers from A to B. However, LTC or instructor or examiner, all these 3 positions are, you start to teach people. You start to teach you start to teach basically the other 3, the upper 3 on, or you start to test them if their proficiency skills and if their skill levels are still at a good point. The retirement age, unlike military aviation, is again 65 years of age. So absolutely fine, you can fly till 65. People continue in aviation even after 65. They continue working as instructors. So they can no longer fly airplanes, but they can still fly as instructors, in the sense they can teach other people how to fly on the simulators, the ones that I talked about earlier. Uh, so that's a very basic overview of how you can become a pilot. So Danya, like I said, if you want this presentation, just let me know. I'll send you a Google Drive link and you can forward it to anyone.
Sure.
Sounds good. All right. A little bit about our lives as pilots, like, or something like our daily schedule, how it goes. So we get a roster. A roster is basically the flights that you're operating for the whole month. So the airline will send you at the beginning of the month, they will send you a PDF file which has all the flights you'll be operating for that month. So you can plan your life accordingly. It's not like, you're waking up today and then you have no idea what flight you're doing tomorrow or later in the day. So as per that roster, we define our lives. And so for my flight day, basically you wake up at whatever random time. That's one of the disadvantages. Your flights can be at any time. Some days we're waking up at like 3 o'clock in the night, and some days we're landing at 3 o'clock in the night. So that way is, unlike a 9 to 5 job, your timings are very, very random. So whatever time your flight is, you wake up, you reach the airport 1 hour, usually it's 1 hour before the flight. We go to a place which is called dispatch, wherein we take all the paperwork for the flight. So paperwork is basically you have all the documents for the flight. It tells you what route you're flying, how much fuel we're carrying for that flight. All of that, it's not calculated by us as airline pilots. The airline has dedicated people who do it for us, and they just provide us with the documents. We look at them, we finalize everything, we make sure everything is correct, and then we proceed to the aircraft. We get onto the aircraft, we do our procedures. So every aircraft has a different set of procedures, and those procedures are supposed to be known by heart. And so you don't refer to a book, you basically know it by heart. For example, when you start up a car, there's a procedure to starting up every car, right? You unlock the door, you get in, you check the handbrake is on, you make sure it's in neutral, put in the key, ignition. Similarly, every airplane has a bit more complicated, but a similar procedure. So we follow that procedure, we do it. There's always two of us, a captain and a first officer on a flight. The captain sits on the left hand side, the first officer sits on the right hand side. Don't ask me the reason for it. I don't think anyone knows the reason for it. It's just how it is. Captain is always on the left, first officer is always on the right. And so we have our own separate duties defined. The aircraft manufacturer, like usually it's Boeing or Airbus or ATR or any company, they in their procedures they will define, okay, the captain will do this stuff, the first officer will do this stuff. So we do our stuff, we prepare the aircraft for departure. It takes us about 10 to 15 minutes to get everything ready. Once that is done, we ask the air traffic control for permission. Now, the air traffic control is like a guy who's sitting in a tower. I'm sure at airports you all must have seen those huge, very tall buildings. They're called air traffic control towers. And so वहाँ पे a person is sitting and he is the one who's guiding us. So we don't, as pilots, do anything that we want. We don't have a freedom of choice wherein we can do whatever we want and go wherever we want. We have to take permission from the air traffic control, because we're not the only ones who are flying an aircraft. There's like other airlines, other airplanes. And so we ask the air traffic control for permission. He allows us depending on the traffic. He has a radar, he can see everyone, and he gives you the permission. We push back, we go to our runway, we take off. As far as our work goes on an aircraft, so most of the work that we're doing is before the flight, right? So before our departure, we set up the whole airplane. That is some work. Honestly speaking, once we are airborne, once we are in the air, there's not much to do. After takeoff, we just engage the autopilot, uh, and then everything is just automatic. All of these airplanes that we fly, that you guys fly on as passengers also, they're all extremely automated. Uh, from autopilots to the number of computers on board those airplanes to the airplanes are at a different level of automation. Uh, the airplanes that we fly, just an interesting fact. I fly the Airbus A320. If you want to buy an aircraft, if you want to buy an Airbus A320, a brand new airplane will cost you somewhere close to about 900 crore rupees. So if you're paying 900 crores for a machine, you expect it to be pretty good, and so it is. The airplanes are absolutely amazing. The level of redundancy in the airplanes is amazing. They're absolutely safe to fly on. Everything in the aircraft is two in number. Your airplane will have at least two engines. Your airplane will have two pilots, two computers for everything. All flight controls, all your management computers, everything is at least two in number. It can be three, four, five as well. So that if one thing fails, the other thing is always there. For example, if your one engine fails, your airplane can very easily and very comfortably fly on the other remaining engine. Uh, and I think it's something of a very fearful thing amongst passengers, at least. If egg engine fail ho gaya, then we're going to crash and all. Airplanes fly absolutely perfectly fine on one single engine also. You can actually like go to your destination on one remaining engine. We don't do that, because if the other one, the one which is working, fails, then you're kind of screwed. But yes, they're absolutely safe. Uh, so once we are airborne, we just engage the autopilot and we let the airplane do its thing. We keep on monitoring everything. So our main job, once we've taken off, once the autopilot is on, is of monitoring things. We monitor if the computers are working fine. We monitor if there are any failures in the system. We monitor what the ATC tells us to do, and we just follow a routing to go to an airport. So for example, if I'm going from Delhi to Bombay, I just cannot follow any random track or any random route that I want. Just like we have highways and we have roads on the ground, similarly in the air also we have routes. These routes are defined by an authority, the Airport Authority of India. So they've defined routes for each and every city, connecting each and every city in India. So whenever I want to go from Delhi to Bombay, I will just tell the computer in the aircraft that I'm going from Delhi to Bombay, and this is the particular route that I'm supposed to follow. Now the computer already knows that route, so it's like Google Maps. When you tell Google Maps, I want to go from A to B, and the Google Maps will tell you the route. Here we tell the system the route, and then the autopilot will just automatically, without any inputs from us, just follow that route. We tell it what altitude we want to climb to, we tell it what speed we want it to fly, and it just keeps on following our orders. That's it. So in terms of flying an aircraft, in terms of hand flying an aircraft, it's, believe me, it's not a lot. Modern airplanes, and even in the future, there's going to be less and less of manual flying by the pilots, and our jobs and our job roles are turning more from people who fly airplanes to people who manage airplanes. So in the future, we're more like managing all the computers, managing the whole situation, rather than actually hand flying an aircraft with our hands. Something like an autopilot in a car, absolutely the same with an aircraft. So, and the next part, so in the cruise phase of our flight, we're usually not doing anything. We're just sitting there eating food, or we're just chit chatting with each other, or we're playing some game, we're playing Candy Crush on our phones, or any random thing. You're just time pass kar rahe hote hain basically. The work again starts when you're approaching an airfield where you want to land. So that's when we again start our work, wherein we get the weather for that airport, we pick the airplane for landing. So now you again got to tell the aircraft, okay, we're landing at this airport. So this is the particular route we're following to this runway, and we're landing on this runway. This is how we're landing on this runway. All of that is told to the computer by us. And then again, the computer will fly that for you. And these modern airplanes, they can land themselves without us touching anything on the aircraft. These airplanes, they can land and stop on the runway automatically. They will apply the brakes automatically. They will follow the localizer and the glide slope. Basically, they'll follow the ILS automatically and bring you down on the ground absolutely safely. We don't usually do that. We don't usually let the autopilots land, because at the end of the day, we also kuch to kaam hum bhi kar lein. Like everything will not be done by the autopilot. So to make ourselves feel a little better about ourselves, we usually do the landings on our own. So whenever you're taking off and whenever you're landing, in most situations, your pilot who's on the aircraft is flying the aircraft. However, uh, when the visibility is bad, for example, in Delhi, whenever we have fog and the visibility is very bad, in that case, we let the autopilot do it, because legally we are not allowed to land the aircraft manually. Then it has to be an automatic landing. So that's the only time where you will find an aircraft to be landing automatically. Otherwise, it's always your pilot who is either doing a good landing or a bad landing. Uh, as far as good and bad landings go, every landing that you can walk away from is a good landing. So I know as passengers, you must have felt कि इस एयरलाइन में लैंडिंग खराब होती है, इस एयरलाइन में लैंडिंग अच्छी होती है. एयर एशिया वाले हमेशा खराब लैंडिंग करते हैं, इंडिगो वाले अच्छी लैंडिंग करते हैं. That's a very common thing amongst passengers. It's not like that. Any pilot, no matter how experienced he or she is, they can all have good or bad landings. I've flown for about 4,500 hours now on airplanes, and even today, on a bad day, or when I'm like, I don't know, when I'm thinking about something else while landing, you end up banging the airplane on the ground, and it does not break the aircraft. It's not in any way dangerous to the aircraft, but yeah, you don't feel good about it, and then you can't obviously go out of the cockpit and face the passengers, because फिर सब ऐसे घूरते हुए जा रहे होते हैं. So, and one more thing that I would like to touch upon is, as passengers, for all of you, turbulence. I don't know why, but a lot of people are so afraid of turbulence. Like, oh my God, अब हम मरने वाले हैं types. Believe me, number of airplanes have been around for what, 110 years now, and in the last 110 years, number of airplanes which have crashed because of turbulence is equal to zero. Not a single airplane has ever crashed because of turbulence. Turbulence is nothing more than a patch of rough air. So whenever the air is smooth, your airplane will fly through it very smoothly. You won't feel anything. However, when the air is bumpy, let's say inside a cloud, or sometimes you have jet streams. Jet streams are like very high speed air which is flowing through the atmosphere at high altitudes. So whenever you pass through those, the air gets turbulent, the air gets bumpy, and when you fly through it, obviously, like a bad road, on a bad road, your car gets shaken around. Similarly, the airplane gets shaken around when you fly through bumpy air. And believe me, it's not dangerous at all. Like we in the cockpit, we're not even bothered by it. We're still playing Candy Crush on our phones while the airplane is facing turbulence. It's just the passenger sitting behind who are like who start shouting and all. But believe me, turbulence is not dangerous at all. So next time you're probably on an aircraft, turbulence is the last of your worries. Like you don't have to worry about turbulence. I know it makes you uncomfortable. It makes you want to puke and थोड़ा सा dizzy हो जाता है. But other than that, that's as far as it goes. You're not gonna crash. And so that's pretty much our day. So once we land, we park the aircraft. If you have another sector to operate, you do that. We usually operate like 2 to 4 sectors in a day. So I could be doing Delhi, Bombay, Delhi, or I could be operating 4 sectors. So I could be operating 4 different flights. And at the end of that, I can either reach my home or I can go to a hotel for a layover. Uh, you park the aircraft, you shut it down, and then you just pick up your bag and you go back home. And that's one of the biggest advantages of a pilot. We don't carry our work home. So once I've shut down the aircraft, once I've finished all my checklists, I have absolutely nothing to worry about when I get back home about my job. My job will only and only start when I'm at the dispatch the next day for my flight. And till that time, while I'm home, I'm absolutely free in my head. So I'm not thinking about my work. Unlike, corporate or some other places where you have to continuously think or continuously write on emails or something. That's not how it is for pilots. So yeah, that's pretty much a day in the life of a pilot in terms of words. I do have videos on this on my YouTube channel also. You guys can go and check that out. That's a more visual presentation of things. But yeah, that's how it is. Jania, do we have any questions?
Yeah, we have some questions with us right now. But before that, can you tell us something about the testing done by the Airbus of takeoff and landing and the
Okay.
autopilot? Yeah.
Okay. So as far as testing goes, whenever you build a new aircraft, for example, the 737, it was built in 1968. It was launched in 1968, but the program had been ongoing for like 5, 6 years. It takes a while to build up an aircraft. And in the while that was being built up, the airplanes are tested thoroughly. So what happens is, let's say I'm an aircraft manufacturer. So I make an aircraft. There are rules which govern on an aircraft, how it's supposed to be made, like how many exits it should have. For example, the doors on your airplane that you see, from which we get in and get out, how many doors have to be there? What has to be the size of those doors? What are the features of those doors? Everything is governed, everything is defined in regulations. So according to those regulations, I as a manufacturer, I create my aircraft, and then I just can't start selling my airplane. Unlike a car, which you just build and you start selling to the market, airplanes don't work like that. Our airplanes have to be first certified by the regulatory authority. For example, if Boeing manufactures an aircraft, Boeing is based in the US, so they will take their aircraft first to FAA. FAA is like their regulator for aviation. Now the FAA will be like, give me one of your airplanes and I'm going to test it thoroughly. So the FAA will conduct tests on that aircraft day in and day out, wherein everything on that airplane is tested. They literally break that aircraft in their testing. Everything is tested on that airplane. Once the FAA is satisfied that the aircraft is working fine, only and only then do these guys allow the aircraft to be sold to other airlines. So the testing is done by FAA, they authorize the airplane, and then as an airline, you can buy the aircraft and start operating it. Otherwise, for an airplane which is in service, so let's say I, as an airline, bought an aircraft, then I have to keep on maintaining the aircraft. The maintenance intervals are again defined. For example, after 1,000 hours of flying, these parts have to be changed on the aircraft. After 5,000 hours, the whole aircraft has to be ripped apart and checked for cracks. So all of this is again defined, and it's all done by the airline or by the aircraft manufacturer. So that's how you test airplanes.
Thank you so much. Now we have some questions in our chat box. We'll try to take up the queries one by one. So the
Okay.
first question is by Sachin Antil, student, BMIET.
Okay.
Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon,
My
Sachin.
name is Sachin Antil. I am a fourth year student from CSC
Okay.
branch. So my father is in Air Force, so I have seen many aircraft from my childhood. So I would
Okay.
like to ask you that how do pilots manage during the crosswinds?
During crosswinds. Okay. So
Yeah.
crosswind landings, it's basically a technique that we are taught about in our flying training. So when we start training, we are taught by the instructors on how to control the aircraft. It's usually done by using the rudder. Just a second, I'll actually show it to you. So this is an airplane. The airplane has on the tail, this thing here is known as a vertical stabilizer. This vertical stabilizer has a movable portion behind it right here. The
Yeah.
rear part of this thing, it can move left and right. So it can go like this or like this. It's called the rudder. And when I move the rudder left or right, my aircraft yaws left or right, depending on which side I move it. So whenever you have crosswinds, what happens is the winds will try and push you to one side. So what we do is we apply the rudder and we get the aircraft back on. Plus you have something known as ailerons. Ailerons are here on both the wing towards the outside of the wing, on both sides towards the behind. Here you have movable surfaces and these ailerons are used to control the aircraft and roll. So you can turn the aircraft left or right by using the ailerons. So whenever you have crosswind, let's say I have winds coming in from the right hand side. So what will happen is they'll try and push me towards the left. So I'll roll my aircraft into the wind, get back here, and then I'll straighten it up by using the rudder. So we use these basic primary flight controls, as we call them, to control the aircraft in crosswinds. All airplanes have defined limits on how much crosswinds they can handle. Uh, let's say the Airbus A320, which I fly, as per the manufacturer, it can handle up to 36 knots of crosswind. So in aviation, we use knots. It's not kilometers per hour. We use nautical
Yeah.
miles per hour. So we can handle up to 36 knots of crosswind, which is somewhere close to about 70, 75 kilometers an hour of winds from the side.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
Thank you, sir. Now the next question is by Anshika Sharma, student, BMIET.
Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon.
I am Anshika, final year student, Electronics and Communication from BMIT. So I
Okay.
wanted to ask that what are the other techniques or technologies used by ATC to communicate with pilots, and also how is landing done? What is the process?
Okay. So as far as communication with the ATC goes, you guys are all engineers, so I'm sure you would understand this. We use VHF communication to talk to the ATC. Mostly it's VHF. VHF is very high frequency, so it's 300 to 30 to 300 megahertz. That's the frequency band we use. Amongst that, we have a smaller band, which is 118 to 136.975, 136.975 megahertz. That's the frequency band that we use. So every ATC has a dedicated frequency for it. Let's say, for example, Delhi. In Delhi, if you want to take off, you have to contact the ATC tower. The tower has a dedicated frequency, which is 118.1 megahertz in Delhi. So what I'll do is on my aircraft, I'll tune 118.1. I have a panel wherein I rotate a few dials and I set 118.1. And when I press the push to talk button on the aircraft, my voice will be modulated on that frequency and it is transmitted in all directions. The ATC has a receiver. He will receive the modulated radio wave. He listens to what I'm saying and then he can reply back to me. So that's how we communicate with the ATC. Every ATC has a different frequency. Everyone operates on a pretty much different frequency. Even at one airport, you can have like 10 different frequencies. So for takeoff and landings, you would have one frequency. After takeoff, for your climb, you would have a different frequency. And that's how you usually communicate for short range. So VHF is only used for short range communication. Let's say you're flying over the oceans. You're flying over the Atlantic. Over the Atlantic, you have absolutely no one around you. There's no ATC close to you. So in that case, we use HF, high frequency. HF communication it provides you with much larger ranges. Your range is somewhere close to about 2,000 to 3,000 nautical miles. And so when you're flying over the oceans, we use HF. The problem with HF is there's a lot of static. You hear that continuous buzz on your headset, which is a pain. So, but there's no other option when you're flying HF. So we use HF, sorry, when you're flying oceanic. So we use HF for long distance or long range communication, and we use VHF radio waves for short range communication. As far as landing goes, see, landing as a thing, it's not very complicated. The path that you're supposed to follow down to a runway, it's defined. You know what? I'll actually share my screen and I'll tell you. Just give me 1 second. Will it share? Yes. Okay. So basically what happens is, if this is your runway here, the path that you're supposed to follow to this runway is defined. Like just like a road defines on how you get from A to B, similarly the path to get to this runway is defined. It's when you manufacture a runway, when you build a new runway, you define this path that you're supposed to follow. So on an airplane, we follow this path all the way down. But the problem is, when you're on this path, your aircraft is descending at somewhere close to about 800 to 900 feet per minute. So in every minute, we are losing about 800 to 900 feet of altitude. The problem is, if you touch down with that much vertical speed, you will end up hitting the ground so hard that all the passengers will hit their head on the roof and the airplane would be broken into pieces. So as a result, we do something known as a flare maneuver. So flare is basically, I'm sure you must have seen it on videos. When you come close to the runway, the aircraft knows, aircraft is coming in like this. And when you're flaring, the aircraft nose comes up and your rate of descent will reduce and you touch down smoothly on the runway. So this reduction of rate of descent when you're approaching, when you're just above the runway, usually somewhere close to about 50 feet above the runway, is done by using the elevators. So the elevators are here. This whole thing, these are known as the horizontal stabilizers, and they have an elevator at the back. So when you're just about to flare, what you do is you bring the elevators up. In the cockpit, you have controls, or you basically pull the control column back in the cockpit. When you pull it back, the elevators come up and the aircraft nose will also come up, and that will reduce your rate of descent. And then you touch down smoothly on the runway. First the main wheels touch down and then eventually the nose wheel will touch down, and that's how you usually land an aircraft. It comes with practice, it takes time. In the beginning, when you start your training, you'll find that you're banging the airplane left, right, and center. Eventually with time you get a hang of it, you practice it, and you realize when to flare, at what height to flare. But that's known as flare, and that's how we land the aircraft.
Thank you, sir. Now the other question is by Kartiki Dev, student, BMIET.
Hello, sir. I wanted to ask that actually I don't have vision in my left eye. So can I apply for the
Okay.
official rank in this thing? In aviation.
Kartika, unfortunately, no. You need to have, like I said, you need to have 6x6 vision.
So not
You
even
need
on the
to be.
official rank.
I'm sorry?
Not even on the official post.
Official as in, see, there's no official post as such.
No,
So
so the one who manages the the ground staff I'm talking about.
yeah, you can. To join as a ground staff or to join as a ground duty, may anything, be it an engineer or be it as a commercial staff or a security staff, yes, of course you can. It then obviously depends from airline to airline, but they will not be testing your eyesight that thoroughly. It's only 6x6 is only required for pilots.
Okay.
Even for a cabin crew, it should be fine. It should not be a problem.
Okay, thank you, sir. Also, I have one more question. Actually, I have one
Yeah.
of my friend who is in hospitality management. So, can he have any
Mhm.
future in this aviation industry?
Of course, as long as he had maths and physics in class 12, he or she, yeah, you do. And
Okay.
even if you did not have maths and physics, you can always clear the 2 exams from NIUS. So NIUS is National Institute of Open Learning. You can just clear your maths and physics from there, and then you're eligible again.
Sir, actually, there is a thing which I heard about that is on the board chefs or something like that. Because right now I'm pursuing hotel management only, and
Mhm.
a few of my alumni from my college, are
Mhm.
associated with some airlines, and they're like having the sessions like on the board chef. They have a pantry car and like
That is associated with catering. What you're talking about is, I think, catering.
yeah.
Catering is basically the food that we get on both the airplanes that is provided to us by the catering departments. So catering is usually third party. For example, Tatsats or Oberoi or any of these
Yeah.
chains, they provide us with food. So your friend must be working in one
Okay.
of those. Yeah.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
All
Thank you, sir.
right.
The next question is by Karuna Girdhar, student, BMIET.
Yes, Karuna.
Hi, sir. My name is Karuna Girdhar. I am a student from third year CSC branch. Sir, you
Okay.
were discussing about the autopilot and landings. So
Mm-hmm.
recently, social media took up the event where DGCA suspended two of its senior executives of AirAsia.
Yeah, that
Sir, due
happened.
to some safety violations, and the pilot who complained about it mentioned something about flaps.
Yes.
So, sir, could you please help us in knowing something about it?
Okay. So first of all, as far as the whole issue goes, as far as the whole controversy goes, it's more of a controversy than anything else. As far as all of that goes, it was, to be honest, because of personal grudges. The pilot who had complained, Gaurav, he had some personal fights with the airline management, and that's how the whole issue just blew out of proportion. As far as the flaps thing goes, see, flaps are basically the surfaces here on the wing of the aircraft towards the back side here. There are surfaces which come out. So these things, when you in the cockpit you have controls, when you given the input, these things will come out and they will increase the lift being produced by the wings. So these wings are producing lift. That lift increases when you bring the flaps out. So now for landing, we have two possible flap positions on the Airbus A320. One is flaps 3 and one is flaps full. So the thing with flaps 3 is your flaps are not out fully, they're slightly inside, and with flaps full, they come out fully as far as they can. So the lift produced is, let the technicalities be. The only difference between flaps 3 and flaps full is if you come with flaps 3 for a landing, your drag on the aircraft is also less. Lift is less, but drag is also less. So your aircraft burns a little less fuel. If you do a flaps full landing, your lift is more, but drag is also more. And as a result, you burn a little extra fuel. On an average, it's about 8 kgs per approach. So what happened was, or what happens is, there are conditions defined on where you can use flaps 3 and where you can use flaps full. Now, as an airline and as a business, you would always want to use flaps 3, right? As much as possible because it's saving you 8 kgs of fuel. I know 8 kgs of fuel does not sound like much, but if you look at all the flights over a period of 1 year, the total resultant savings is a huge number. So as a result, all airlines, pretty much all airlines will always want you to do a flaps 3 or a flaps 3 landing. uh, Gaurav did flaps full landings, and the company just sent him an informatory mail saying, see, we want you to do flaps 3 landings, but you've done flap full landings. So, and that was it. That's all the company said to him. See, you've been doing flaps full landings. We want you to do these many flaps 3 landings. And that's it. It was unfortunately blown out of proportion. Flaps 3 landings are also absolutely safe. There's nothing wrong with flap 3 landings. I'll just give you a small example. Let's say you're landing at an airport where there's lots of thunderstorms and it's raining, it's pouring cats and dogs, and the runway is totally filled up with water. What do you expect? You expect that you land with flaps full, right? Because with flaps full, the landing distance that you require on the runway to stop the aircraft is comparatively small. It's less by about 100 odd meters. Uh, that's the common general thinking for someone who's not in aviation. However, actually, as per the manufacturer, as per Airbus or as per Boeing, you're actually to be landing with flaps 3. Like the airline or the manufacturer actually tells you to use flaps 3 in such conditions as long as your landing distance is permitting. The reason is your aircraft will perform better because of the less drag. So in case you have to go around, in case you're not able to land, so you have to do a go around or you have to discontinue the approach, in which case your aircraft will perform better if you're at flaps 3. So these things are not known to the general public, and which is why everyone started thinking that flaps 3 is unsafe. But honestly speaking, flaps 3 is absolutely safe. If it was unsafe, it would have never been approved by the FAA or the regulatory authorities, or Airbus would have never built flaps 3 landings if they thought it was unsafe. So the whole matter, the whole controversy, it was just a personal grudge Gaurav had with the management, and safety was unnecessarily put in between just to, just to gain public sympathy and public support, and that's how the whole thing got blown out of proportion. DGCA did suspend 2 of our executives, not executives, like, top management level people, and the reason for their suspension is just unknown to anyone. The airline has not issued anything to us in written. We don't even know officially if they've been suspended or not. Like, I haven't seen any official document from DGCA or from AirAsia which tells us that, these guys are no longer in their respective posts. So that's why they were suspended is something I really have no idea. I just read it in the news. That's it. We have no official word from the airline. I believe they've been suspended because they were post holders and because of an ongoing investigation. If they continue staying in their post, they can always tamper with the evidence, and that is the reason why they were removed from their post. That's what I think. In reality, what the reason is, has DGC actually found anything against the airline or against the policies of the airline? I have no idea, because no policy has been changed. Whatever issues were raised by Gaurav, all of those issues, none of the policies relating to those issues, anything has changed. It's all the same as earlier. So I believe it's just for an ongoing investigation that they've been removed temporarily so that the investigation can be more fair. And that's how it is.
Thank you, sir. So now we do have some questions, but as we are losing time, so let's just sum up the session here. Thank you for
All right.
sharing your such great knowledge with us. Now I
My pleasure.
request our Dean Academics, Dr. Vishal Jain. So would you like to share some views on today's session?
Yeah, sure, Jania. Am I audible?
Yes,
Yes, sir.
yes.
Great. Thank you, Captain Tapesh. It was
My
really
pleasure, sir.
an honor to have you here on this platform. And really, the entire webinar was quite informative. And you shared probably all the queries which a normal passenger, or for that matter, a candidate has. And you gave all the information to how to join the aviation industry. And I'm sure that some of the students would definitely be willing to join aviation in the coming time. There was one of our students, I don't know whether you know him or not, but he knows you. He's quite senior to you. I think uh, Ritesh Jain. He's in one of the.
Yeah. I know. Ritesh was with Jet earlier.
Yes. Currently, he's working there, and he's pass out of 2007 batch of our college.
Okay. Yeah, I know him.
So I
Yes.
was speaking to him there last night. So he told me about you.
Okay.
So really, Tapesh, wonderful to have you here once again. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, sir.
And
My pleasure.
yes, hope to see you soon, sometime when you are here or
Absolutely, sir.
have you here.
Absolutely.
Thank you once again. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
And thank you, Jania, for being a wonderful host. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir. So now it is the time to end such an exciting and amazing session. Thank you all for being such a great and supportive audience to us, and a special thanks to our guest speaker, Captain Tapesh Kumar. So see you all
Thank
in
you so
our next
much.
session. Hope to see you all there. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you, guys.